Good hello and welcome to Onionskin. In particular, welcome once again to another mootable moment. A moot being little personal animation challenges for those little spur-of-the-moment things. Something that needs to be made right now because if it gets added to a to-do list of any kind, it will never ever happen. Particularly when you're talking to somebody and you need like a GIF and an emoji or something like that, and quite the perfect response doesn't really exist. So you just make it. But the problem is, animation takes forever. So you gotta animate it quickly, otherwise the conversation will move on to something else, and then you've made something that just doesn't make any sense in the context of the thing. So, just now, on the Onionskin Discord, I use this site, randomly posted that ants have taken over their orange tree with this, you see it? To which I respond, not the oranges, and I had to. I don't know why, but I had to animate it. In fact, I already got the base drawing down before I even thought that this should be a thing that is needed to be recorded. It's already in 4 layers. The base layer is 4 frames of just the same thing traced, so it will have a boil, and then the eyes, the paws, and the mouth, because they're all gonna do things. Then 1 extra layer for those horrible veins that oranges have through the middle. I made the mouth shape, the gaping rotten hole around the edge much bigger than the mouth itself. It will all be masked in, so it's filled with green for now. I separated that green onto the color art at some point. Likewise, the main body of the orange itself, it needs to have its fill separated onto the color art sublayer, but 4 times because it has that 4 layers of boil. In the node view, I've used the color art node to separate that sublayer through a cutter so that the mouth will appear only inside the orange itself. This needs to happen a second time as the veins only appear on the inside of the mouth. So the color art sub for the mouth is then separated, sent through all that, but then also only the line art is revealed because then a big horrible green mask does not need to be shown. Ha! Now, the mouth fill itself is going to be a gradient which is sourced directly from the photo and then just sort of punched up a little bit. I probably could have just used that green mask to fill it in, but whatever. I was working too quickly to really stop and think sensibly. It's been masked in now with radial gradient shifted into place. It's starting to get its general form. Now, I'm starting to get a bit concerned that the main body of the orange itself has quite a lot of boil to it, but the whole thing doesn't swing. It'll get a quake eventually, but first for the paws, they need to have light on them, right? They tend to have like a bit of a bump map in real life. So it's got a second thread with an apply peg transformation, just sort of shifting the whole duplication of the whole thing a little bit to the right, and then its color will be shifted. At first I used the map blur because that's just a really quick and dirty way to change color or something, but it does not show up in working view. It only shows up in render view. Color override, that's the best way to do it. It's an extra step because you need to select the color that you want to change to something else. However, it does show up in working view. That is ideal. Now I can see it while I'm working on it. Look, it has a stem now. That's on its own layer with it's just sort of sitting there. But this will be the only sort of like quote unquote rigging that happens. Everything else in a singular peg so it can all move, and then all of that goes up into the bind as well. Pivot point of the orange at the base of the stem, and then where it connects, and then I mean, you can see it. Okay, man, doubling of time lapse is hard. Anyway, ant time. I think I'm going to use a particle system for this. Haven't used them in a while. Let's see how we go. Frame by frame an ant, scurrying around. Look at that. Dash, 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 dash with an onion skin on. Just do a little trail. Oh, I need to get it back to the beginning somehow. Copy and paste the end frame. All right, let's just sort of match that up. However many frames of that ended up being about 26 or so. Hooray. It scurries around a little bit of a figure 8 pattern. Now time to make a particle for it. I use the basic particle system to get everything going. Now, it has been so long since I've used the particle system, and it's so long every time between each use that it's very difficult to remember how this thing works. The sprite emitter is quite deep, and I need to figure out the right set of switches very quickly to how I can get them scurrying about. Look at what's happening. You see, they're all moving around together at once in the same pattern. That's not how ants do, unless they're in a line or something. They don't do square dancing. So I flip around some switches trying to figure out how to get it randomly selected which one, they all start at different times. And I found that, but then they didn't move. because it's like it's indexing different frame numbers as a source, but it will just sort of use those to generate from. But I've only got the particle generator generating once on the first frame, and then it shuts down so that the ants stay there and they're not spawning and dying continuously. It took a while to figure out how to get them to have this sort of combination, right? It'll choose a random one and play it through and loop it, until finally I remembered the golden rule of the particle system. Don't build it from scratch. This is what the examples are for. Everyone opens up Harmony for the first time and they see the bees node and they're like, Onionskin, what are the bees for? Why is there a dedicated bees function? This is what the bees is, well, not the bees in particular, but the examples section. For using particles, you want to go into the examples and you find something that's like 90% of the way there. And then you can swap it out for your own artwork and all the other switches. So that's what I did. I went in and I realized that the most similar thing that I wanted, ironically, not the bees, despite it being another hive mind insect species, it was actually the grass. Because this grass example right here, it is, you know, like it's not waving on the particle physics. Look at its drawing substitutions. It's doing that frame by frame. And in the particles, they're all waving randomly. So there we go. That's what I needed. So I ended up just sort of ripping that sprite emitter straight out of that system and then plonking it down in my one and seeing what was different. It was much, much closer now, but it was, you know, still generating. Oh my goodness, look at that swarm. That's insane, right? So strip it all back to the whole shutdown after one frame, blah, blah, blah. And I could have just like been okay with that and moved on to the next step, but I flipped around with a few more switches to see what was different from what I had did in the first pass. And there was one switch inside the initial parameters tab that you can crank up, and it was left at 1 on my first one, and that just meant only show the first frame. And oh, okay, well, let's put it all the way up to how long my animation is, and then it played in its entirety and everything was perfectly fine. The only other issue this one had is that it was actually a little bit too long and the ants would die for a brief moment, but that's because they had a lifespan of 30 and my ant animation was 26. So it all got corrected, everything perfectly looped around, fantastic, all good. So with that out of the way, mask the ants inside the mouth itself, and time to actually animate it. Don't have time for a whole lot of animation. Oh, one of my favorite nodes, the quake. Just get some sporadic random shaky movement in there and it looks like you've put in a whole lot more work than you really did. Oh yeah, first I put the ants into 2s because they were going too fast otherwise. Yeah. So the quake throws things around in 3-dimensional space. So I turned off Z. Actually, I think I turned off all movement maybe, but I cranked up rotation. But it rotates from the middle. There's probably a better way to do it. I can't remember because, again, I wasn't really stopping to think. So I just used the peg to move it down to approximately inside the middle of the camera, and then had the quake so it would rotate from the middle, and then used another peg on top of that to put it back to where it should be. And then it rotated from the stem. And then I did it from the stem again, so you get like a double movement. Finally, background. Just got squares with different bits of green. The grass was interesting. That imported its own palette. I just stole some of those with some orange spots in them. Look at me, oh, background artist, hooray. And then a radial blur just blurred it out so much to the point that no one could really tell, and hopefully background artist friends do not get grumpy at me. It's very flat, so you know what, screw it, I'm gonna lean into the flatness and do my very much overused trick on basically every single thumbnail I make, which is the matte blur and the matte resize, which bulks out the edges and recolors it a little bit, and then slap in a drop shadow as well to very deliberately show, hey, this is a flat piece floating on top of another flat piece. I don't care, but you know, I think it kind of looks nice. So that was quick enough to be able to get a mutable moment back into that conversation before it was too late. Oh, look at that little custom GIF, hooray. Not only that, working files for Patreons and stuff. I don't know if you'll get anything out of looking at this guy, but have some fun with it. Bye.